Back in the Stone Age, humans figured out that attacking prey or enemies from a distance opened up a world of possibilities. That's how the spear evolved from a melee weapon into a throwing weapon. Later came the spear thrower. Some theories suggest that this approach to hunting and warfare played a crucial role in the downfall of the physically stronger Neanderthals, who relied more on close combat. As the Ice Age ended and mammoths disappeared, humans shifted to hunting smaller animals. That's when the bow came into play. It may have been invented in Africa over 60,000 years ago, but it didn't become widespread in Eurasia until about 10,000 years ago. Despite its simplicity, a basic bow made from a shaft and string was used all the way up to modern times. A great example is the English longbow. At the same time, the East favored compact and powerful composite bows, often used by mounted warriors. The crossbow, essentially a bow mounted on a frame, was a natural evolution of the concept. And if we compare not specific models but an average English longbow to a 15th century crossbow, the crossbow looks a lot more appealing in terms of raw performance. Thanks to composite or steel limbs and mechanical drawing aids, crossbows could reach draw weights of 200 to 300 kilograms or more, at least 4 times that of an English longbow. The kinetic energy of a crossbow bolt ranged from 150 to 400 joules, while an arrow from a longbow averaged around 100 joules. A crossbow bolt could reach speeds of up to 90 meters per second, or 324 kilometers per hour. In contrast, a longbow arrow had an average speed of 55 meters per second, or 200 kilometers per hour. The maximum effective range of a longbow, which we've covered in a separate video, was slightly over 200 meters. Meanwhile, a crossbow typically outperformed that by 1.5 to 2 times. However, some argue that crossbow bolts were less predictable at long range compared to arrows. It's hard to say for sure. There are plenty of historical sources with varying data on different weapons, but in general, a crossbow with 4 to 6 times the draw weight of a longbow had 2 to 3 times the effectiveness. This is because, unlike a bullet, an arrow or a bolt is relatively large, making it more affected by air resistance, wind, and gravity. That means it rapidly loses energy and speed. Plus, as draw weight increases, the limbs take longer to return to their original position. So you can't just double a bow's power and expect double the performance. It's a bit like the technological limits of propeller-driven aircraft, where increasing engine power and propeller speed resulted in only marginal gains due to increasing air resistance. For example, tests on modern, well-designed crossbow bolts show that within the first 45 meters of flight, speed loss is already around 10%, and that speed loss accelerates progressively. Heavier medieval arrows and bolts likely lost speed even faster. Also, medieval crossbows with wooden or steel limbs, despite their raw power, were slower to release energy than modern synthetic ones. By comparison, a bullet from a modern rifle loses about 10% of its speed, but only after the first 100 meters. But let's get back on track. The key takeaway is that the crossbow was more powerful, better at penetrating armor, and easier to master. It could be fired from tight spaces, different angles, and even behind cover. But it had one major downside: rate of fire. A heavy crossbow with a German or English windlass had a firing rate of about 2 shots per minute. Lighter crossbows, loaded with a goat's foot lever or belt hook, managed 3 to 6 shots per minute. Meanwhile, a skilled archer's speed was limited only by their technique. While exact numbers vary, a bow could fire at least twice as fast. Crossbows were also significantly more expensive, and being a more complex mechanical device, they were more prone to breaking. Steel limbs, in particular, became brittle in the cold. So if we take an average crossbow and longbow and compare them shot for shot, the crossbow wins in ease of use, accuracy, projectile speed, and penetration power. But if we compare them in terms of sustained fire, the bow has one key advantage: rate of fire. The longbow versus crossbow debate perfectly illustrates the golden rule of mechanics. No simple machine increases total work done. The more you gain in power, the more you lose in speed, in this case, rate of fire.